Earth rotates from west to east at 1,670 kilometers per hour. That's why the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. It's been this way for 4.5 billion years. But what if one day it reversed? What if Earth suddenly began spinning backwards? The sun would rise in the west, but that would be the least of your problems. Ocean currents would flip, deserts would bloom, and rainforests would vanish. This is what would actually happen if Earth spun the other way. If Earth instantly reversed its spin, the results would be catastrophic. Everything not anchored to bedrock would keep moving at over 1,000 kilometers per hour. Buildings, oceans, the atmosphere itself. Supersonic winds would rip across continents, flattening everything. But let's imagine a slower reversal, one that happens over thousands of years. Life could adapt, barely. The first change, the sun now rises in the west and sets in the east. Your sense of direction inverts. East becomes west. Every compass points wrong. GPS systems fail until recalibrated. Days would still last 24 hours, but the planet's year, its relation to the sun, would shift. The rotation would now oppose Earth's orbit, altering how sunlight falls on the planet. Seasons, shadows, and day lengths would all behave differently. The Coriolis effect, the invisible force that curves moving air and water due to Earth's spin, would completely invert. Today, it makes hurricanes spin counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere and clockwise in the southern. Reverse the rotation, and that flips. Northern storms would now spiral clockwise, southern ones counterclockwise. Ocean gyres, was vast, slow-moving water systems, would begin to rotate in the opposite direction. It would take decades to fully settle, but the process would begin immediately. The high-altitude jet streams, which guide global weather, would reverse too, flowing east to west instead of west to east. The result, an entirely new planetary weather system. Earth's winds are controlled by rotation. The trade winds, westerlies, and polar easterlies would all swap direction. The famous trade winds that once carried explorers westward would now blow east. Old maritime routes would become useless. In mid-latitudes, westerly winds that drive weather across Europe and North America would reverse. Storms that once crossed the U.S. from the Pacific would now come from the Atlantic. Europe, usually warmed by gentle Atlantic air, would instead face freezing continental winds from the east. Even monsoons would reorganize. The Indian monsoon, lifeblood for billions, would collapse and reform differently. India could dry out. Meanwhile, the Sahara might flood with seasonal rains. Simulations by the Max Planck Institute show that reversing Earth's rotation wouldn't just change the weather, it would rewrite the planet's climate map. With winds reversed and the Coriolis force flipped, ocean currents would follow. The Gulf Stream, which warms northern Europe, would flow backward, cooling the continent drastically. London would feel like Siberia. Around Antarctica, the world's largest current, the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, would rotate the opposite way, redistributing ocean heat and possibly warming parts of a southern pole. The Pacific Gyre, home to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, would swirl in reverse, scattering the debris field and creating a new accumulation zone elsewhere. Even fisheries would relocate. Upwelling zones that currently feed nutrient-rich waters along west coasts would shift eastward. California's fertile coastlines would starve, while the U.S. East Coast might suddenly bloom with marine life. The Coast Valley Terra Wells. The Max Planck models revealed the most dramatic transformation. Entire biomes swap places. The Sahara Desert, now arid and lifeless, would turn green. Moisture from the Atlantic would bring rainfall exceeding a meter per year. Forests and grasslands would spread across North Africa. Meanwhile, the Amazon would wither. Today, it thrives on trade winds carrying moisture from the Atlantic. Reverse them, and the Andes Mountains block Pacific air. The Amazon dries, turning into savanna, then desert. Australia's deserts would green. Southeast Asia's jungles might dry out. In North America, the Great Plains would become lush, while the Pacific Northwest dries into prairie. Humanity would face massive agricultural upheaval, new fertile lands, but also vast abandoned ones. Earth's magnetic field comes from its spinning molten iron core, but if the planet reversed direction, would the core follow? Probably not immediately. The surface and core rotate at slightly different speeds, and friction between them could create chaos deep underground. During the transition, the magnetic field could weaken or even collapse. Without it, Earth would be bombarded by solar radiation. Satellites would fail, power grids would flicker, cancer rates could spike as cosmic rays reached the ground. Migrating animals would lose their sense of direction. Birds, whales, turtles, all disoriented. Eventually, as the core adjusted, a new magnetic field would emerge, but reversed. North becomes south, and every compass must be rewritten. Evolution is indifferent to direction, but not to speed. Slow change means adaptation. Rapid change means extinction. Ecosystems would collapse as climate shifted. Polar bears, rainforest frogs, and countless insects would vanish. Migratory birds would fly to the wrong continents, but generalists, adaptable species like rats, crows, and cockroaches, would thrive. They always do. Over centuries, plants would redistribute with the new wind patterns. Forests would sprout in old deserts. Deserts would bloom where jungles once stood. Humanity would survive, but at immense cost. Billions displaced, coastlines redrawn, entire civilizations forced to migrate toward new habitable zones. Could Earth really reverse its spin? No, not without total destruction. The planet's rotation is locked by angular momentum, which can't change unless acted upon by an unimaginable external force. To stop and restart Earth's spin in the opposite direction would require energy equal to the sun's output for an entire week. But small changes do occur. The moon's gravity gradually slows Earth's rotation, adding milliseconds to each day every century. In a few 100 million years, a day will last 25 hours. That's slowing, not reversing. Venus, however, does spin backward. Scientists believe a colossal impact flipped its rotation billions of years ago. If something that massive struck Earth, the impact would vaporize everything. So technically possible, but not survivable. Earth will never spin backwards. The laws of physics simply won't allow it. But the thought experiment reveals just how finely tuned our planet is. Shift one factor, rotation, and everything else unravels. Deserts turn green, forests die, climates flip. The research that modeled this scenario isn't science fiction. It helps scientists understand exoplanets, worlds orbiting other stars that may spin the wrong way, rotate slowly, or never rotate at all. If Earth ever did reverse, life would adapt. It always does. But the cost would be unimaginable. Mass migration, famine, extinction, and rebirth on a new, unfamiliar world. So next time you watch the sunset, remember, it sets in the west because our planet spins in just one direction. And that simple motion shapes everything we know about home.